Jimenez, and when you get to the byline,
Dominguez complains to someone shun. Oh, he rolls a perfect cross to Jesus Ferreira to slam it home. From the left side.
How about some keys to the game, Warren? For players, for every goal scored this season, Audi will donate $500. And here's another one. Just spaced down. You must sense danger. Like that, you can walk in.
when it back.
And it's Bafa Pico again.
Welcome into Q2 Stadium, where, as you just saw there, a lot of good action in Copa Tejas. Austin FC, Houston Dynamo, and FC Dallas. All three teams still in the mix coming into tonight's match. But Victor, Houston Dynamo can clinch Copa Tejas and take away bragging rights.
That's
tonight.
right.
They can end it tonight.
It's been a lackluster season for all three Texas clubs, but tonight one of them can take it home. Austin can stay alive. They need to win to stay alive. And obviously FC Dallas is biting their nails at home, trying to see if they're going to be able to take this, right? At least their fans. Maybe that's the theme of this. More so than for the players, for the coaches, for the fans, this cup is important.
It is. It's all about the fans, and it's all about how the players and coaches can pick themselves up and put that pride on the line for the fans, because I think that's something that certainly on the Austin end of things, I think there's been some questions there about how much they're committed to this competition, to this in-state rivalry. But if you don't know, my name's Chris Bils. I cover Austin FC for the Striker Texas. This is Victor Araiza. He covers the Houston Dynamo, and we've been following these teams all year. Unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. We know that already. No playoffs for any of the three Texas MLS teams, but that just means that tonight and this Copa Tejas competition, at least in my mind, Victor, it means everything right now.
It means that much more. It's the only thing there in the case of Houston, right? They've already won the Texas Derby. They want to make it a clean sweep. There's still that edge, right, of proving who the premier Texas team is, at least for this season. Obviously, like you mentioned, Austin here, they've been the talk of the league for the year because of the fans. There's a pressure. And Houston and Dallas, they kind of want to show that they're still they're still around. They're still important, and especially with Houston, they want to show they're like you said, the big Texas team because, well, at the end of the day, 2 MLS Cups.
Yeah, and I think we came into this year, and I think Austin sort of had a big head. I mean, they come in with this beautiful stadium. They've got the fans here every week, bringing the noise here in the South End that you kind of see
Maybe
behind
rightly
us.
so. I mean, all of this needs to be applauded. I mean, it is something that not every team has, not to this level, and certainly in the stands. So there is kudos to be given. But I think you're right. Maybe now this season's been a little, at least the latter part of it, it's back down to earth.
Well, I mean, I think they thought coming in that they were going to come in and automatically, be better than Houston and Dallas just because they exist. And this is a chance for Houston to stake that claim and say, hey, we are still the kings of Texas. And, maybe it doesn't mean a ton this year to be the king of Texas in MLS, but we're Texas. I mean, we can find a way to make this all about ourselves, right?
We'll secede. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll secede from the league.
Copa Tejas is basically MLS Cup around here, right? No. But I mean, it is a big deal, I think, and it is really neat that the fans can come together and create this trophy, create this competition that ultimately is going to have a lot of meaning for whichever team is able to lift that. I mean, I think it's more painful to not win it. Almost, you almost just don't want that feeling of watching another team in this state, knowing where you all sit in the standings. You don't want another feeling of another team lifting that trophy against you, right?
Right. I mean, what is the feeling around here in Austin? I mean, does this seem now like a big deal? Because especially the way the season has gone, I mean, it's a lot of losses for Austin FC. 19, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
They're up there, right? They're challenging other expansion teams. They could, reach that record maybe of or they can at least get to 20, right? So,
Right.
I mean, it's
I think I saw in your story right that there's been 4 expansion teams that have lost, or there's been 3 expansion,
teams. This
that
could
have
be
lost 20 games, and FC Cincinnati, Chivas USA,
Real Salt Lake.
and Real Salt Lake. So that's not the kind of company that you want to be in if you're Austin FC. And to your point, I mean, to the fans, I think that a lot of these fans grew up in either Dallas or Houston, right? And some of them were even, especially in the FC Dallas case, I think a lot of
some of them have gotten replacement tattoos.
Right, exactly. Some of them grew up as fans of these clubs, and they don't want to feel like they're supporting a club that's lesser than the club that they grew up supporting. And so I think it means a ton, especially to those folks that grew up in the Metroplex, the folks that grew up in Austin, in Houston. And I think that, you know, this has been the question all along, all season long, is you go up to Frisco after obviously the 3-2 result we saw here at Q2. You rotate the squad heavily. You know, a lot of people that fans weren't expecting to see on the pitch in that match, and it felt like a slap in the face to the fans. And so, you know, here's another case where Austin, you know, they lost last weekend. They went on the road midweek against to San Jose, ran out 10 of the same 11 players.
Did they quit, Chris?
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. Josh Wolf's got some problems with some of the questions that he was facing after that match, but I'm not sure. You and I probably have a different opinion on that, but we'll get to that.
Right.
But I think that to the fans, like, it means everything. This, you know, you can almost, I'm not going to say it takes away from what happened Wednesday night, because Wednesday night was, you know, I keep thinking that we've seen the lowest moment of the season and it keeps going lower. But
well, Houston's in a way similar. I mean, you think, you know, all right, season's gone, no more playoffs, but at least you got a big win over Seattle. You had LA coming into town, they lose 3-0, and it just seems like, you know, will this season ever end, right? Disappointment ever, you know, get cut short, and just kind of get started working on next year and trying to get that hope back up, trying to get back to potentially contending for an MLS Cup, which is ultimately what all these clubs say they want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to your point, I mean, the way the midweek happens for all 3 teams, but certainly for Houston and Austin, it's not the picture that either Tab Ramos or Josh Wolf want of their teams heading into the offseason at all.
2 coaches that are being questioned. One, Luchi Gonzalez already got fired during the season.
I know. Can we go 3 for 3?
Wow.
I don't think. See, that's the thing. Let's get into the Josh Wolf stuff, and then we'll get back around to Tab. So midweek, Austin goes to San Jose. Yeah, I was there at PayPal Park, and you know, obviously the first half left something to be desired, but they were in the match. They make a couple subs at halftime. Cecilio comes off for Rodney Redis. Musa Jite comes off. Josh Wolf said after the match that he had an ankle problem that we'll see if he starts tonight, because it sounds like he's a little bit sore there. But Mackenzie Gaines comes on. They lose that focal point, and they give up the first goal, which Julio Cascante took full ownership of that. And he got caught out. He said that the field was wet. Ball took a bounce on him. He got beat, and then he said that it felt like the team. That was the game. That was the game. He didn't use the word quit. And that was the response to the question I asked him, is whether he felt like the team quit. And, of course, Josh Wolf got that question.
Right.
Credit to Eric Goodman from the Austin Chronicle, who asked Josh Wolf if he felt like his team has quit on the season. And Josh took exception to that. He called it, we'll censor a bit.
Oh, he's going to defend his players.
He called it a BS question. You know, he's defending his players. But what did you think of that moment, and what you're seeing from, you know, quite obviously a defensive Josh Wolf at this point in the season?
I mean, he's a young coach. He's a coach that's still, you know, getting into the early years of his coaching career, and that's what coaches in that situation do.
Sure.
Because I've seen it. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it as well. You know, covering MLS over the years. You know, but you can tell, like, it matters to these players. It matters to these coaches. It does affect them. They do read what goes on Twitter, on social media.
Right.
They do read the newspaper. They do read the strikertexas.com. Go subscribe. I mean, they do check and see what people are saying. Try to get an idea what the fans comment as well. You know, I'm sure if they run into them on the streets here in Austin, a lot of the fans know them. They have a couple of words for them. And they obviously want to win and be successful. And, you know, it doesn't always work out that way. Look, I think in his case, we think he's going to be here next season, right? The ownership is in on Josh Wolf. I would even say all in on Josh Wolf. So he's kind of just got to maybe just chill a little bit and be the steady hand, because at the end of the day, the bigger part of this is that players see how the coaches react. And that
it is.
plays into
That's
how they
the
play
big
for the
thing for
coaches.
me, and we've seen that the last couple of weeks. After the loss on the weekend, I sort of asked him a similar type of question where I was sort of questioning, some decision making, and he got defensive there as well. And I think that when I talked to him a month or so ago, I think you got the feeling from him that he felt like there was some growth happening in the squad. Guys are getting used to their roles. Finally, he had Musa Jite in, he had Sebastian Drusi in. It felt like things were trending in the right direction. Obviously, they get the win against Real Salt Lake. They get the win against LA Galaxy. Things are looking better, and the wheels have just come off the last few weeks. And I think there's a real sense of frustration coming from Josh Wolf right now that I don't know is super productive, right?
Right.
I don't know that these players are necessarily liking what they're seeing and hearing and feeling around this club right now.
We've talked about this too on the Striker MLS podcast. There's another plug. We've said, look, players talk amongst themselves. I mean, you don't think, guys like Cecilio Dominguez, who's been in other leagues, is maybe thinking, I don't know if the situation is what I expected, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure Darwin Quintero's having the same kind of thoughts in Houston. It happens. I mean, players talk within themselves. They wonder. Sometimes they if they don't buy fully into what the coach is saying, or the results aren't there. I mean, they're going to fall into what they think it's going to ultimately make them look good. Because at the end of the day, if they're not here next year, they got to be looking for another job.
And it's been guys like Julio Cascante and Diego Fagundes and Brad Stuper, guys who have been around this league that clearly are bought into the project and to a certain extent are bought into Josh Wolf, who have been, picking up the mic after games and saying, hey, listen, if there's guys in this group that it feels like, not everyone's pulling as hard at this point in the season because we're not going to make the playoffs, we need to talk about that. And that can't be acceptable. We have to come back out on Sunday against Houston Dynamo and play for a trophy for these fans. And we're going to see tonight, I think, how much pride is in this group for lack of a better phrase, this shirt for Austin FC,
right.
For Verde, right? How much are you bought in on a season when things haven't gone your way and you're not going to get to play in the playoffs? But listen, there's still going to be 20,500 fans in these seats who expect you to put on a show and expect you to go into the off season bleeding for them and trying. And I don't know that, there's this is the 16th home match. I don't know when we've had 15 matches where you can totally walk away and say that, these players are as bought in as the
fans. It's been great
section, right?
And there's a reason they've been national TV time and time again. And there's a reason why they're in a way right now being the poster of MLS. All the commercials,
sure.
Most of the media articles. I mean, the attention is on Austin, Texas, because of Austin FC. But you're right. Now it's time for the players and the coaches and everybody on the field, the product on the field, to reflect what they brought, all that buzz they've created off the field as well.
Yeah. And let's get back into the Houston side of things, because Victor, I mean, this team obviously went through that 16-game skid. We saw them come through here. We thought that maybe they might have a chance to break that winless streak. And it didn't go their way. Obviously, 3-2 loss. One of the more exciting games of the season.
They still to win on the road, by the way.
Yeah.
They're coming in here. They haven't won on the road all year.
But, of course, when Austin went back to Houston, it was another one of those nights when you're questioning whether the team is committed. And, it was a real point of pride, I think, for Houston to get that victory and to finally get back on the winning way. Darwin Quintero back in the lineup. He's obviously shown well. Where is the vibe with this Houston team? Maybe set Wednesday aside or don't, but, is there something that you're building on? What does tonight mean in the larger picture as far as Tom Ramos, as far as the direction of this club? Is it just sort of you write off these last 4 games and you get to the offseason, or, how much can we take out of a night like tonight where we're saying the fans care a lot and.
Right. Well, a lot of players are playing for their contract options. They're
right.
playing for a job next year. So there's that part of it. Tom Ramos, the coach himself, is playing for his job next year. In weird comparison to Josh Wolf, I mean, he's in a different situation where the club can look at his line of work and decide, well, you know what? it's easier to just go in a different direction. There's obviously going to be a new general manager coming in the next couple of weeks. I mean, that will kind of dictate where it goes. But ultimately, the players, I think, have the most to gain from these last games. They feel that, I think like the fans, like us as media, when we look at this product, what they've been able to build this year, it should have been a different season. They should have won more games. They just should have been in the playoffs, and it didn't work out that way. And I'm sure, and the players feel the same way. So they want to get that bitter taste out of their mouth. They want to prove that statement is true. And of course, taking this trophy, the bragging rights, I mean, it would just add more to it. In a similar discussion, maybe, you said that, that the Austin players quit. Houston has been making an effort to show that they've been showing effort. But Darwin Seren during the week did say, mentally, the mentality of the players, maybe not everybody is there.
Yeah.
That extra
There's
play.
Fatigue. There's fatigue when it comes to a season like this where you're grinding week in and week out. You have these 3-match weeks and the results aren't going your way. And all
You're
of a sudden
down 2-0. It's easier to mail it in.
Yeah. I think Austin's definitely dealing with that. But I want to get into some of the pieces you wrote this week because it sounds like you got to talk to a number of different players, get their feelings not on this rivalry, like you said, Darwin Seren on the feeling around the end of the season. What was the feeling you got as far as like how genuine that is? From
Seren's, I think, was the most genuine. I mean, he talks about ultimately this cup does nothing for him as a player. I mean, this is just another game. It's a joy for the fans, but him as a player, he's going to be disappointed that they didn't make the playoffs, that they weren't able to compete for an MLS Cup, and he's been one of the few that have been around for years now. No playoffs in 4 straight years. That gets frustrating. Back to what you were saying, like guys like Quintero. I mean, what's the story there? Is there a possibility of coming back? Zarek Valentin, who's been one of the most involved in the community. Certainly, we've heard from the Portland fans that he, was the same way up there. Talking about these are important. They want to give that extra effort. Fafa Pico also the same way. So ultimately, it's more so for the fans. But again, anything they can do to convince that they should be back next year, whether it be in Houston or any other MLS club, I think that's obviously their focus.
So I think we're both starting to think this way a little bit about this roster and what you need to change and who's fighting for those spots. Give me 1 or 2 guys that you've really got your eye on, and I can kind of do the same for Austin FC, but guys who you know that they're playing for a contract and know that, or that these last few games matter maybe a little bit more.
I would say Fafa Pico is one of them. He's obviously made a statement to raise his game. He's had a great year. He says he feels great in Houston, a place where he feels loved, and that in turn has given him his best season. He said he's not making the tweet that he put the other day or anything else, a controversy about getting into the national team picture, but if you do look at the numbers, along with Ricardo Pepi, he's one of the Americans that are contributing to the league, and maybe they don't get as much hype. I think he absolutely has a point. Maybe guys like him, if they were another nationality from Argentina or Brazil, maybe there would be more to talk about him. But he's one, obviously. I think so because of the national team picture as well. I mean, you start getting these kind of performances, why not throw that question mark out? Right. Maybe not so much a contract, but I think a guy that does have to prove something to the organization is the only homegrown that has had any success, and that's Memo Rodriguez. Yeah. He was expected to be a big contributor this year. Hasn't really put up any numbers.
He had a great start to the season, right? Or a good start to the season, and things have sort of
He had a goal in the first goal of the season, actually, for the entire league. And he's had performances here and there as he's had in previous years, but he hasn't been able to develop that consistency that is needed of a homegrown. And I don't know if that speaks more to him or it speaks more to the Dynamo Academy where he was built, right? But ultimately, I do think that situation eventually has to get settled. But I think from what we've seen, and maybe it's harsh to say, but it just seems like he's not going to be the player that people thought he was going to be.
Yeah. And you look at the Austin side, I think some guys that have continued to play, but you maybe start to question, the long-term success of this club if they're in as big a roles as they are right now. And a guy like Tomas Pochettino, who's got that designated player tag, we're still looking for him to be, his consistency. We're still looking to see him so fully slot into his best position. We think he's a number 6, but does he provide enough defensive bite? Is he clean enough passing to play back there. And Alex Ring, I've been really curious to see. I think he's sort of dropped off the last few matches, and it's curious because that's a guy that I think that Austin FC absolutely wants to have back next year as long as he wants to be here. But I do wonder how much of a toll being the captain in the face of a team that, and clearly not agreeing at points with the coach about where he should be playing on the field. If maybe, everybody in the league knows the value of Alex Ring, I wonder if there's some questions, some offers that come Claudio Reyna's way about him. The midfield is a big question mark for me especially because Josh Wolf has said that they're looking for a central midfielder. And you look at that central midfield and you think, well, Danny Pereira is not going anywhere. He's a generation Adidas.
Seems like they have plenty of options in midfield.
Right. So, what's got to give? Ulysses Segura should be back next year. If he's healthy and should play a role. So midfield is an area where I'd really like to see some guys take some ownership. And if they don't, I start to question, maybe some of those conversations are starting to be had. Of course, we'll find out more, and we'll have more coverage of that on the Striker Texas. One thing I want to do is sort of delve into the full roster and who we think's coming back, who we think's not, and what that means for making this team better, because it's pretty clear at this point that it's not just time, right? There's got to be some retooling of the roster, almost as much for confidence as anything, because you run this team back.
Right.
I don't know if Sebastian Drusi or Musa Chite came in later in the year, or even like Cecilia Dominguez, Alex Ring. I don't know if you can fully have that belief that you're a playoff team when things have gone so poorly with the same group of guys. I don't know. I think I would have said maybe something different a month or two ago, but that just seems to be where we're at. That you've got to start evaluating it and making some moves to.
That sounds like a Claudio Reyna problem. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's going to have his work cut out for him for sure. And tell me about the GM search before we get out of here. Let's touch on that a little bit.
Yeah,
obviously some reporting you've been digging into a little bit, some stuff you can go read on the Striker Texas, but how quickly does Houston want to get this hire done, and how does that affect the way that they go into this offseason?
Well, I think it gets done over the next couple of weeks. I think probably by the start of the offseason, we find out, they start turning the page, we start finding, seeing what direction they want to go, because I think that's the biggest thing that we're going to get from this GM search. Obviously, some of the names that are out there, 2 former Dynamos, Pat Onstad, Craig Weibel, they've done the work at other organizations in MLS. Maybe the question mark there should have been, why didn't they get an opportunity in Houston, right? And that's part of the bigger story over the years. But at the end of the day, we're talking about trying to fix the franchise, have it recover back to the days of success, right? That's what owner Ted Siegel wants to do. That would be a way to do it. But there's also an interesting name, Denis Teclose, who used to be the essentially the general manager of the Mexican national team. He had a hand to play in the Tigres Academy in Mexico, in Liga MX. So that would be a different direction. That would, I would imagine, signal trying to, dig into the gold mine that is getting talent from Mexico and bringing them over in MLS. And there's obviously an interest from Major League Soccer to try to win over that same market as well. I mean, it's the highest, it's the league. Liga MX is the league with the highest rating in the United States, independent of all the other ones.
Yeah, fans starting to stream in here. Roberto Silva on the camera, sort of showing us some of the flavor today at Q2 Stadium. And, a little breeze makes me think about Circuit of the Americas and what's going on out there. Obviously, the world stage, Austin is in the spotlight this weekend. But I want to ask you, Victor, about what's going on with the World Cup bid. Obviously, FIFA is in town. Right now, they're visiting Dallas, doing some site visits. But I know
tomorrow they're in Houston.
This is a big week for Houston soccer and what we might see as far as the global game coming here in 2026. So, what do you think they're going to be looking at, and how much, what does Houston have to show to prove that they're in that mix?
Well, I think everything Houston shows, just the same way Dallas is currently doing. I think anybody here in the state of Texas knows these stadiums are all great. Yep. Transportation might be the one thing in Houston. It's not as, you and I have gotten to go to a lot of cities this year, and there's better public transportation.
That's a Texas problem in general. I think.
Than it is in Houston. I think that may be the biggest issue with Houston in particular, but I don't think, as far as airports, as far as hospitality, right, as far as things to do, Houston and Dallas on their own, I mean, maybe they would benefit if they weren't in the same state. I don't know. But I think both of them should be part of the World Cup in 2026, and I think we're obviously going to be on top of it, trying to figure out how this is going, how FIFA evaluates, and what they have to say on Tuesday. And then I don't think there should be any doubt that Texas should have 2 cities in the World Cup.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it would be massive. Obviously, for Texas to get that stage. I mean, you see the way that people show up for events in this state. I was out at Coda yesterday, and people love coming to Austin. I know that Houston's got a lot of flavor as well, and a lot of nationalities represented where people wouldn't even need to travel to see their home country, and that's a really cool thing as well. But let's, as I don't know if you guys can hear, but a lot the way in.
I'm sure they can hear.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up here in a second, but real quick, Victor, give me one key to the match, and maybe should we get into predictions here? I know it's so hard. After the way these guys
especially
played on
the way
Wednesday.
the last game went, right? I mean, the red card.
What team are we gonna see? Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think in the preview, I think one of the keys was the coaching battle. I do think that's going to be the deciding factor today. Both teams have good players. Both teams have difference makers. Both teams have enough to win this game. And ultimately, Copa Tejas, right? I mean, Austin, I think, can run the gauntlet, take 2 in a row. I think Houston can win here today. It ultimately could be decided by the X's and O's. Will Tab Ramos go with his strongest 11? And will he put Darwin Quintero? I would say that's the key for Houston. Will he give Darwin Quintero the keys to the kingdom? Let him succeed. Let him win this game.
Quick rundown of the scenarios in case you didn't do your homework and you weren't on the striker. Texas this week. Again, go subscribe, 30 days free, and check out all the work that we're doing over there. And some good coverage of the World Cup bids, I think, as well. Victor Araiza and John Arnold both be digging into that. But on the Copa Tejas front, again, Houston can clinch and celebrate here at Q2 if they win tonight. That'll be the end of Copa Tejas. If they do not win, if they draw, then that puts all the emphasis on
the last game.
Yeah. And I think that leaves all 3 teams in with a chance if that were to happen. Because if Dallas and Austin
would have to win at Dallas for Houston to take it with a tie.
Right. No, Austin's eliminated with anything less than a win. Dallas and Houston will still be in the mix. We see a draw tonight. If Austin wins, Houston's done. They can no longer win, and it comes down to Dallas, and Dallas can win with a draw or a victory on the 30th next Saturday up in Frisco. And obviously Austin, if they can run the gauntlet, they can win tonight. They can win next Saturday. They would be the Copa Tejas champions in their first season. So lots on the line tonight, lots to be decided yet. And, I think selfishly I'd like to see sort of a Super Bowl kind of scenario next weekend. But I understand this is also a big moment for Houston. And if they can get this done, I think it does. It sends a message to the rest of the state that the Dynamo are here to stay and are still, you can kind of play up those 2 trophies that you got over Dallas and Austin and kind of feel good heading into an offseason.
Although I'm sure they'll be playing to play for too with Dallas and Austin, especially from the last trip up there.
Oh yeah. No, I think there's
Stars Night or whatever. But the NHL is back, right? So I mean, it might be Stars Night again.
It might be, yeah. Yeah. No, it should be a good one here tonight. Breezy day. Warm day in Austin, and again, I'm interested to see if the second half kind of fills up a little bit more. I was talking to Eric Goodman, again from the Austin Chronicle, who said he was going to try to hit the start of the USGB and then make it over here for kickoff. I was like, good luck with that, man. I hope you got a helicopter.
He's going to need one of those F1 cars.
Yeah, he's going to need. And maybe he can borrow.
Get a ride here from one of the racers.
Borrow a car, but it's a big day in Austin, and but still looks like a lot of Verde around, and just goes to show how people show up for this club, even when there's other things going on in the city. So should be a good match. And again, Copa Tejas on the line. Really fun day. Thanks to Austin FC and Ryan Madden for setting us up and letting us get on the concourse today. And thanks to the folks at Copa Tejas for putting on this competition, and the folks at the supporters group for getting this done. Victor, any last words before we sign off and get out of here, get up to the press box?
Well, obviously, let's hope that it's an interesting game here tonight. It's not a dull result, right? But I think that's probably impossible. I do want to remind everybody, thestrikertexas.com. That's a place where you can get all your information. And we certainly obviously thank all of you who have supported this project over the year. And,
Absolutely.
And we're excited, obviously, to be able to bring you more coverage, especially from these Copa Tejas games.
Yeah, we're certainly not done yet, not even with this season. And again, yeah, thanks to everybody. Go subscribe. Go check out what we're doing. We'll have a live blog today. We'll have takeaways from each of us and some more coverage coming on this weekend's action. And we'll be back after the game as well with some post-game reaction.
All right.
I'm Chris Bils. This is Victor Araiza. Enjoy the match, and we'll see you afterward.
Oh, it's a red. Goodness, continuing his run, the little chip cross. Between Fagundes and Jimenez. And when you get to the byline,
Dominguez, complaining to someone, Shun. Oh,